All right, here we go. Whee! On to another video. A video I've been looking forward to making. That's not easy to make. It's going to be a lot of information. So sit back, buckle up. We're going to get after it. I'm Chadsky, and I put out videos all the time, streams all the time. We've built a really good community. I encourage you to join my Discord. The Discord link is in the description, okay? That's where a lot of these conversations come from. It's where a lot of my content comes from on helping players get better at the game and doing it as a community and doing it positively and having a good time with it. That is what we love to do because I love this game and I love playing this game. So with that being said, I thought about this and we had a whole bunch of different requests for Canyon, all right? So that's what this video is about. It's about Canyon. If you like the video, throw a thumbs up on it. If you like the channel, we have grown to 10,000 subscribers and done it in 3 months. Okay, I don't know if that's good. They tell me that's amazing, but whatever. We just like doing what we do. We're doing it honestly and having a good time with it. And it doesn't cost you anything. So if you're watching this and you have not subscribed, just hit the subscribe button. Help us out. It doesn't cost you anything. And it really helps out the channel and what we're trying to continue to create. So with that being said, let's get into it, shall we? We're talking about Canyon. We're talking about Canyon lineups. Now, this is a Sunset Canyon guide. This is for Home Kingdom. Okay, and so I will do a Lost Canyon guide when I get into Lost Kingdom and KVK, where you can run 6 marches. I want to run that. I want to run the hell out of it, and then I want to tell you what works and what doesn't work. But for now, I'm going to tell you what works for me. I'm going to tell you what works for others, and we're going to go through this as we dissect our canyons. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is talking about different canyon lineups. Then I'm going to talk about setups. Okay, and how to go win when attacking, and then we'll talk about some setups for defense. So first and foremost, let's talk about this. Now, this is a bunch of information. Nobody panic. I'll go through all of it, and we can discuss it together, okay? So here's what we've got, all right? This is what I like to use at the very top. Here's all the different lineups that I see people using and the different things that they do, okay? First and foremost, I like to use Philip with Guan, okay? Philip Guan is a really interesting dynamic. A lot of players are using it. Guan is still meta in Canyon because of his silence. And Philip is great, obviously, for the buffing that he does for his own march and 4 other marches. And he's also great for the double cast, because if you can double cast Guan's silence, you pretty much ensure yourself a win, okay? It's really crazy how that works out. So this is what I like running. I like keeping Trajan with Mulan. This is for players who maybe don't have leadership gear to put Shajar with Trajan, or players who don't have Shajar. This is what I like to run. I like to run my Trajan with Mulan. I've got a bunch of troops, and I have infantry gear for that. And so from that standpoint, we also have Luce with Constantine. You're going to see Luce Constantine all throughout this because that is the best tank march you can get. Still does damage, but with Luce and Constantine, just about everybody in every kingdom at every level runs that, and that is what is really, really good. We talked about the Guan Philip, and then Huo Arthur. There is no march that does more damage than Huo and Arthur. Okay, so Huo Arthur is what you want to run. It's absolutely crazy. It's busted, all right? And that's one of the things you can do. Some people use Arthur primary and then move the Philip. We'll talk about that because you can do that if you have great Delta formation stuff. But Huo Arthur is the most commonly used high damage march in Canyon. And then having that with Zuge and Herman, that's one way to go about this, okay? So from here, you'll see that that's kind of how I have my stuff set up. Now, if you look at this, this is how I have my defense set up, and it's set up just like that. I've got my Luce with Constantine. I've got my Trajan. Let me fix this real quick. This for whatever reason, this always happens to me. It changes my troop composition. I've got Zuge with Herman. I've got Guan with Philip, and then I've got Huo with Arthur. I like to run offlane. We'll talk about the setup in a few, but that's generally how I like to run that. Okay, so if we come back into this, here's another aspect. Now we're going to go with a Shajar with Zuge situation. Okay, this is actually how I set up on defense All right, I take the Herman out, I put the Shajar in, or I'm sorry, this is how I set up on offense on it when I attack. And I'll show you how I do that because I'm going to use a whole bunch of tickets and go attack people on the setups, okay? But this is very, very common for a lot of people to put Shajar behind Zuge and run that front lane and let it do the healing, let it do the sustain, and then you put a damage dealer behind it. So that is another good way to run it with Shajar behind Zuge, okay? The third thing is for players who have leadership gear. And if you have leadership gear in your Trajan, you can put Shajar behind Trajan. It is busted. It lasts forever. And it does buffing. It does healing for other marches. It does healing for itself. It lasts forever. And it is really, really good to run. So when you run this with the Luce Constantine tank, okay, you're doing so much buffing and so much tanking that you don't necessarily have to run the Philip. Okay, and so a lot of people like to run this. A lot of like 2377 guys, Wildline and Mr. Hope. I duked it out with them all last season in Lost Canyon, and they love to run this stuff. They keep Guan with CPO. They run a Huo Arthur. Sometimes they'll run an Arthur Philip, and then they'll run a Zuge with Herman. So that's another way that you can set this up. There's all kinds of different ways, but these are just basically showing you the most common pairings and how it works. Now, I can't go declare something is the best because it all depends on the equipment, it depends on what armaments, it depends on your setup, and it depends on the troop count, which we'll get into later, okay? If you want to run the Arthur Philip, this is the way I've seen it work a lot. Now, you could easily put a Guan with CPO here, or you could put a Guan with Ragnar if you prefer that. But I've seen a lot of this where they run a Trajan with Mulan, a Luce with Constantine, a CPO behind Ragnar, and then an Arthur with Philip. This is really good for the combo stuff that Arthur does. If you have Delta formation and you have great cavalry gear, you can run this. This is what a lot of big players run as well. I've seen some of the biggest players in Canyon run this all the time. And then you obviously bring in the Shajar with Zuge. And so that is a very, very common aspect if you want to run the Arthur with Philip. Okay, the next one we'll go through is a no Philip, no Shajar. Like you don't have either one of those, or you don't want to run Philip and you don't have Shajar. This is really, really common here. You're going with 3 more DPS type situations without Philip, and then you're running the Trajan Mulan, you're running the Luce with Constantine, and then you can run whatever infantry you want to run. I like Guan CPO. I also like Guan Ragnar. I think Guan Ragnar is actually a little bit better in some cases. And then the big damage dealer with Huo Arthur, and then the big damage dealer with Zuge and Herman. Now from there, we have a situation where you want to run 2 archers. Now this is what I've seen. I played against a guy named Hen who has since retired. He used to be the king of 2934. He had crazy archer gear, crazy stuff. And he ran a Trajan with Constantine, he ran a Guan CPO, a Huo with Arthur, and then 2 archer marches. This is how he ran it. He ran Zuge with Herman, and then he ran Ash with YSG. Ash YSG does crazy stuff. Okay, YSG and his third relic ramps up skill damage so much, and you get good defense from that, that you can actually make this work in Canyon. And obviously the AoE helps, and enhancing Ash's expertise is great, and it's awesome. Ash is really, really good with a 2 archer composition. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with 2 calves. All right, this is what I like to run sometimes in a 4v1 situation. All right, and so you can do this a couple different ways. Let me just scroll down here as we're looking at this. You have Trajan Constantine. Okay, you got a good DPS with Guan CPO. You've got a massive DPS with Huo, with Arthur. You run Zuge Herman, and then you run Nevsky with Belly. If you're attacking, this is really good if you're going a 4x1, and I'll show you what a 4x1 is, because Belly applies his expertise, and when you have more than three or more troops hitting a target, you get the all damage on the target. That's why this is really, really effective, okay? To beat Fluffy a lot, I would have to run this, because Fluffy's absolutely insane with his stuff. If you don't have a Trajan, now let's look at this one. With no Trajan, you're going to run your Luce with Constantine. Then you bring Philip back to run Philip behind Guan. You run the high DPS with Huo and Arthur, and then you run Zhuge with Herman. From there, you can go 2 Cavs, and you can put Nevsky with Joan, or you can put Nevsky with Belly, or you can run 2 archers. You can put Ash with YSG. That's always a good one. Or you can run a a third infantry, a second DPS infantry with Ragnar and Scipio. Those are the different ways that you can run. So get a nice, good picture of this and how we set this thing up. This is how we do it and how we like to do it. And so once you kind of get an idea of how that works, then we can talk about how to set some of these things up. But you can't go wrong with any of that, guys. Just depending on what works. The beauty with Canyon is that it's every day. You get chances every day. You load up extra chances by the end of the week, and you can go have fun with this and make this enjoyable, okay? It gives you something to do in off season. It gives you a little bit of rewards with placing higher every day. And so with that being said, these are the different options you have. It all depends on what you have armaments of, what you have gear of, and all that stuff. But with that being said, let's talk first before we go into setup about what makes Canyon work. Okay, this is for you Canyon junkies. All right, the main thing with Canyon that you have to understand when it comes to the gear, regardless of how you run your gear, as you can see, I have infantry gear that's talented for leadership. But if you look, I've got everything level 4 or level 3. And the reason why is because for Canyon, especially this one with the gloves, where you get 2, level 3 and level 4 give you troop cap. You want troop cap in Canyon. Troop cap is king in Canyon. As you can see here, I've got the boots. That's great. I even have the drums level 3 because the accessory level 3s give you crazy amounts of troop cap. All right, and then I put a coin on here just because, even though coin isn't that great anymore and just doesn't mitigate a whole bunch of damage like it used to 5 years ago. And that's a whole nother conversation. But you want to try to get level 3 on a lot of this stuff to run your troop count up. You can see my Huo March, same thing. I got level 5 on everything. This is the most you can get in a March as far as troop cap, and you'll see that. My Luce, same thing. A lot of level 3s and higher, and that's the way I like to run that. Guan, more DPS. Okay, I don't have level 3s on my accessories, and so that is maxing out the troop count. Then you get over here to archers, still got a little bit of improvement to do over here. I got the helmet, I've got the chest, I've got the weapon, all level 3 and level 4. I've got the pants as well to level 4. I need to work the gloves. That's the next thing I got to do to get my troop cap for my archers going, and then work on some accessories. So that's kind of how I have this thing figured out. So that is very, very key to this. Also, what is key to any kind of Canyon setup is DPS. You want to go as much DPS as possible. Just get as much as you can get, okay? On my Trajan, I actually have Echelon, all right? I swapped and put the Civilized on Trajan because it does some crazy stuff to give me rage, all right? So there's all kinds of different ways you can run armaments. There's all kinds of things, because you can put Arch. I used to have my Arch set. This whole set right here was all Arch. And I put it, and I had it running on Trajan with infantries because I had that infantry gear, and I changed it all to Echelon. And so that's essentially how we set that up. The same thing over here with Zhuge. You want to do as much DPS as you can. It's the same thing up here with Guan. I don't have any special inscriptions in this one, but I got a lot of stats and I got a lot of DPS. All right. And so Luce this is how I run my stuff. I switched that to the Civilized. Okay. And because I'm a backup rallying garrison with my infantry, but I can still rally in garrison. So when we get into KVK fighting, I'll probably move this Civilized over here back over to my Luce. Okay. Because I'm going to turn that back into Invincible that sits right here on my Arch formation. But I've got all these other stuff ready to go. I've even got a double inscription with a whole bunch of stats here. And so with that, there's all kinds of stuff you can work on. Don't use destructive. Don't ever mitigate your rage when it comes to Canyon. Ever, ever, ever. Do not use destructive, and stay away from any of that stuff. Destructive and battle ready. Anytime you're costing yourself rage, you'll lose in Canyon. You just will. You got to rage as fast as you can and do the best you can. Now, where we've talked about war drums and how war drums have been really, really good in the field, they're not necessarily ideal in Canyon. I run it on my Trajan because I've got it to level 3. I want the troops. All right. But I don't run war drums anywhere else here in Canyon. I don't run war drums. I have two other war drums I run in fighting, ARC and KVK. But in this, you don't have to worry about the diminishing returns on the ring, because in Canyon, you attack and you stick to it. Fighting back and forth, sometimes drums are better because it's a 2-second buff that you get here. Well, you lose a lot of that when you're running away, when you're hit and run constantly back and forth. And so in Canyon, you're going to go run it down. So you're just going to go hammer. So that's how I have my gear and everything set up. Okay, so let's get into this and let's talk about my defense. All right. Now, this is my particular defense. Now, people might be different, okay? But when I go with the defense like this, I take Shajar off the field. When I go offensively, I'll show you how I use Shajar. But defensively, I want max damage coming from Zuge. I put Zuge behind Luce. You got to remember, when you're being attacked, because this is my defense, you're going to swing up. When you swing up, it keeps Luce out of trouble. Now, he doesn't quite hit as many targets, but that's okay. The main reason why is because I want to put Guan with Philip right here behind Trajan. Okay, Trajan's going to last a long time. Guan's going to do enough damage, and that Philip is going to sit right here so that Philip is buffing all of the marches. So the Philip buff is meta when it comes to it, and that's how I run this defense. I put Huo down here because one of two things happens. My Huo, if they go head up with me, which basically means they're going to run two marches in one, they're just going to go head up. This Huo will wreck anything that you try to go head up with. All right, I've got the troops for it. I've got the gear. I've got everything for it. This Huo is busted good. If they go 4v1, okay, and they put 4 marches on my Huo, well, whatever march my Huo is going to hit, it's going to drop their HP bar considerably before it dies. And I have to trust that I'm going to do enough DPS from these 4 marches to hit and kill the tank rally before they can kill my Huo rally and run up to where I'm at. And I'll show you kind of how that works, okay? And so let's come over here and go do some of this history. So here's PTI. Now, PTI is awesome at Canyon. He won our little Canyon tournament we had. We had a bunch of big kingdoms in it, and he really did really well and won it. And so you can see he runs the Trajan Shajar. And part of that is because he's got crazy archer armaments and or crazy archer gear. And I think he puts that archer gear actually behind Trajan. But let's look at what happens when he tried to hit me, okay? And I end up beating him just barely, but I'm able to sustain and beat him. Look how he sets up to hit me. I can't remember if he goes head up or 4v1, but we'll find out real quick. Okay, he's going head up here. And what he's wanting to do, and you can see this, he's wanting to pull his Zuge down so it hits my Huo. It doesn't matter. My Huo will wreck his Huo in the end. And so when you see up here, his Zuge, the key to winning Arc or winning Sunset Canyon is killing the Trajan. You want to kill the other team's Trajan. This is at the high end. And there's ways to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that when I attack. But him putting Zuge here basically ensures that my Canyon is going to last a pretty good while. So now my Huo finishes off his Huo, and I'm already on to his Trajan. And then over here, my Luce and my Zuge are doing work. Okay, Zuge stays out of trouble. We're doing work. We've got them killed. Now I've got all 5 marches on his Trajan. He finally kills my Trajan. I've got this thing won. Even though I'm running out of troops, I've still got it won pretty good. Okay, so that's pretty much how that works out in that defense. Let me see if there's another defense here. Here's Vader Sith. He's really good. Okay, let's see how he hit me. He's running the Ragnar with Philip. I saw it. So he's doing a 4v1. All right, so he's going to put his tank march here, and watch, my goal is to kill this before he kills my Huo and then runs up to my Trajan, okay? And you can see with my Huo, I fire off so fast. Look at the HP bar for this Ragnar. It's not going to be able to do much of anything. Even though he kills my Huo first and he can get on my Trajan, that Ragnar's already almost dead, okay? So now when I turn on all his marches, I got to try to go toe-to-toe with his Trajan. But with this Ragnar not being able to do much without any troops, you can see that everything else I have is chilling. And then I get on his Zuge, I get on his Zuge, his Ragnar's already died by the AoE, and then once I kill his Zuge, I turn on his Huo, and I just have too much for him. So that's kind of some different ways to set up and why I set up that way on defense. Now, if you want to look at this, defensively, a lot of people will put Luce in the off lane. And they do that because they want to put more damage up here in the top lane. Luce is harder to deal with than a Huo off lane, as far as you can't kill the Luce Constantine near as fast. How I would do this, and I've run this before, is that if I'm going to put Luce in off lane, I'm going to put my Huo up front. I'm going to put Huo in the top lane. I'm going to switch these two, because basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to make my top lane as damage as possible, as much damage as possible. And the best way to do that is to probably put CPO or Ragnar behind my Guan. But if I'm gonna run Guan, this is how I like to run it, just like that. And the reason why is because you want your Guan getting hit first, and you want your Guan tanking 2 marches. Because when it does that, it has a chance to fire off its active skill before the enemy fires off theirs. And if you do that, then you are cooking, okay? You are absolutely cooking. To silence them before they fire their active skill, or silence them before their secondaries can fire their active skill, all right? And what this also does is it keeps Huo out of trouble. It puts Huo up here and in defense, and so Huo just hammers away, and you got to deal with him. Okay, so that's a very, very high top line DPS setup with a Luce off lane. So there's multiple ways you can set up. Sometimes a lot of people like to set up with Trajan, and they set up just like this. And they put it exactly like that to have Trajan in the top lane. It's a weird setup, and what you're trying to do there is tank. You're putting more tank and keeping the buff of Trajan alive. If they go 4v1 against you and they kill your Huo, then you got Luce and Constantine tanking. That's why a lot of players like to do that, okay? And so there's all kinds of different ways to run it, and I'm just giving you some examples of how to set this up. Now, you guys saw my defense. My defense does not have a Shajar in it. Now I'm going to go on attack, okay? And I've got 8 attacks here. Let's go hit the best of what we've got in 2293. Okay, this is how I like to set up against PTI. You can see he's going a bottom setup, all right? So if I see Luce here, Luce and Guan is not going to do enough damage to my Luce, okay? My Luce can handle this and not die very quickly. So what I like to do is I'm going to pull this back. I'm going to put Guan up here. So I'm going to pull this back behind where my Trajan's going to hit. Now, my goal in this is to kill his Trajan as fast as possible. All right, it's got 130,000 troops, and I have got to keep my Huo right here because I want Huo hammering this Trajan, hammering it, okay? And by putting this staggered back here, I'm pulling Luce back behind these 2 marches. So his Luce is going to go back behind them, and so is Guan. So he's not getting any AoE. He's just focusing on my Luce. And because he's not running Huo down here where his Luce is, he can't kill my Luce in time. I'll show you what I mean by that, all right? I'm going to sacrifice my Guan. And when I sacrifice my Guan, okay, it's basically saying I'm going to wrap Zuge down. I'm going to sacrifice the Guan. His Huo will probably kill my Guan, or he'll get really, really close to it. But it doesn't matter, because Zuge is going to set up down here. Zuge I put with Shajar when it comes to this, because it's going to buff and it's going to heal all those troops. But the main reason why I do it this way is because I want Zuge's AoE to hit his Zuge and his Trajan. I'm trying to kill the Trajan. That's rule number 1, kill his Trajan. All right, so here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to hammer him with my highest DPS I can. Okay, I'm gonna tank it with my Trajan, and I'm gonna grab some AoE from Zuge. Let's see how this works out. All right, and so as these come together, you're gonna see his bottom lane is gonna tuck in behind mine, so I don't have to worry about any AoE. It's back here, no worries. I'm all good there. Okay, now let's see how fast I can kill his Trajan. His Trajan lasts forever. It's a Trajan Shajar, but watch with my Zuge, I'm clipping both these marches. All right, and then my Huo is staying fresh, and I am putting work in on his Trajan, like massive work. Now, I told you I was going to sacrifice Guan. You can see up top there, Guan's kind of being sacrificed. You know, I'm losing a bunch of HP on Guan, but it doesn't matter. I'm killing his Trajan as fast as possible. And then I move on to his Zuge. I've almost got that killed. And then now his Huo's dead, Zuge's dead. I've got all of his troops dead up here. Now it's a 5v2. And Guan's still got a little bit of health left. So now he's going to turn on my Trajan that's got plenty of, still got plenty of HP left, and I'm just hammering his Luce now. Huo stays out of damage, stays out of trouble. He's probably going to get my Guan with some AoE, but it doesn't matter. I've got him pretty much killed by now. Okay, so that's PTI. He's really, really difficult to go against. Let me see here. Let's go against Hungy and see how we're going to set up for this one. Okay, this is a good one. I like to do this one. So from here, he's got a Ragnar and a Huo sitting top lane. And when he has that, that's high DPS. Okay, so I can't just put Luce here to tank it. I can't do that because he'll kill it too fast. All right, so I've got to help Luce out. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to put Guan behind him. I am going to keep Huo behind my Trajan because I'm trying to, name of the game, you're still trying to kill his Trajan as fast as possible. And this is why I love Shajar. You can put Zuge to go one-on-one with Luce, and you can put Shajar behind Zuge, and that's going to let it last forever. Okay, it's really going to last a long time. It's going to do a ton of healing. Plus, I want to clip his Trajan with my Zuge. And if I put him right here, it's going to set up about right here. And the AoE is going to clip his Trajan because that's my goal. I'm killing his Trajan as fast as possible. So I want to put massive damage on him with the Huo, and I want to be able to clip him with my Zuge. But I want my Zuge to stay alive to keep this fight going with his Luce. I don't care if his Luce tags my Huo in the AoE. I'm not worried about that. I'm more concerned with killing his Trajan. I'll trade that. I'll trade getting my Zuge AoE on his Trajan for his Luce AoE to hit my HQ, because if he hits Huo, but I kill his Trajan as fast as I can, I've got this thing won. That's just how this works. Okay, so let's see how that sets up. And the main thing up top is I want this thing to last up here. My top lane's just got to last. I don't care how long it takes or whatever. It's got to last. So it looks like my Zuge is set up to where it's going to clip it. And yep, you see 5,700. It does it. So my Luce is clipping his Trajan. Now look how fast his Trajan's melting. And that's the key here, is to get his Trajan to melt as fast as possible. Then I'm on to his Zuge. And it looks like my top lane is hanging in there, even though the DPS is on it pretty good. And it looks like I've got this won pretty handedly. Now, I got a lot more troops in Hungy. You can see the power at the top, but it doesn't matter what the power is. It's still the same philosophy you want to look at when you're attacking, okay? And so there's other ways to do this as well. Let's go fight Bera. Bera's got some crazy infantry stuff. All right, and so when you look at this, there's other ways you can do this. You can do this, and you can put, CPO behind Guan or Ragnar behind Guan, and you can also bring in, because I have like a crazy good Arthur set, right? Like if I went with Arthur, I've got this Delta set right here. And I could run that with Philip, no problem. So a lot of people like to do that. And they like to run maybe Zuge with Shajar or Trajan with Shajar, and then bring more DPS with the Zuge Herman, and then run like an Arthur with Philip as more of your buffing march that's doing good damage, and then use your Guan to run Ragnar or CPO behind him, okay? And so Luce and Constantine is the main thing that stays. But this is that same setup. Now check this out. When I set up for this, I told you, if it's full DPS on the top row or on the bottom row, I do not like to leave Luce by himself, okay? But he's got Zuge. Zuge is not massive DPS. Now, he's great AoE, but as far as single target massive DPS, I can move my Guan down here and put my Luce here, okay? And when I do that, I'm going to pull all this stuff behind, and I'm going to try to get out of this AoE, especially Ragnar's and Zuge's. And since it's Zuge and not Huo, I can leave him by himself. So let's see if that works out. I want Zuge to tank this Luce, because I want him, if I put Guan in front, Zuge's going to come down, and he's going to miss the Trajan AoE. I want Zuge hitting Trajan. Name of the game, kill the Trajan. That's as fast as possible. That's why I love Huo behind Trajan. So let's look at that and see how this thing works out. And it should work out the same, just like we talked about. Guan's going to come down. Zuge's going to stay in line to where he's still clipping Trajan. Yep, right there. Boom, 4,600 on the Trajan. And then now Huo starts doing work. Okay, and that's how you want to set it up. Meanwhile, my Luce is surviving. Now, I couldn't pull him back far enough, so you can see that my Trajan is actually getting AoE'd by the Zuge and the Herman. You can see the Herman stacks on my Trajan. I don't like that very much. It's going to be a closer fight than it was supposed to be, okay? Because he's going to kill my Luce before I kill his Luce. So you can kind of see my Huo's got some work to do. I got to get his Huo off the field, okay? And so with that being said, he's going to get on my Huo. and it's gonna be hurt. It's gonna hurt. Now, luckily, I got his Ragnar down far enough to where my Huo should kill his Ragnar, and then he's probably gonna clip me with his Zuge. Meanwhile, my 2 marches are still hammering down here. I mean, he's got a Luce that is busted good. Okay, so now I get my 3 marches on his Zuge. I ensure I get the W here, and we're good to go. So those are kind of some different ways to set up against different players. Let me see Fluffy here. Now, Fluffy's really, really hard. Really hard. And I might lose this to Fluffy. Okay, you can see here, he's going with big time damage in front row. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up just like this, like I've been setting up. Now, this might be a 50-50. You can see he has more troops than I do. He has 138,000 with his Trajan Shajar. This thing is a tank. He's got crazy leadership gear. He puts his Zuge behind here. When he puts his Huo behind here, it makes it really difficult. Really difficult. I got to go like a 4v1 in this situation. But this is how I'll set up. What I'm basically hoping is that my Luce and my Guan, if they can fire off their skill damage before his Guan silences me, I can get the W. That's all it comes down to, because I'm going to try to kill his Trajan as fast as possible. That's the name of the game. Kill the Trajan. So let's just see how this works before we get out of here. I'm going to pull him back. I'm going to get both marches on his Guan. There's a little bit of siege stuff that goes on where they got to adjust, and it looks like, boom, I got my Guan to fire off, and I got my Luce to fire off. So without even seeing anything else, this is a W for me. Okay, that's exactly what you have to do against his Guan. That's why Guans are so important, guys. You got to get those things to fire off as fast as possible. I'm killing his Trajan very quickly here. I'm going to get on his Luce, or I'm sorry, his Zuge, and I'm going to kill that. My Guan's going to get killed now because his Huo is full freaking health. Okay, but it looks like I've got his Zuge killed before. I've got good health on my Trajan, and I've got great health on my Huo. So I'll get his Guan down, got that down. Now I'm on to his Huo, and if my Trajan can tank this long enough for my Huo to do the damage, then this is going to get to be an easy win. I say easy win. He's one of the toughest guys to go against. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of how that one works out. Let's look at the stats. I still had 3 marches in my Huo with the healing. Another thing with Huo, and this is the caveat to this, is what I'll conclude with, is that a lot of people run Huo not expertise for the field. That's the way I like to run them. I take the expertise off. I'll do a skill reset, okay, and I'll take that off to where I don't have his expertise. But for Canyon, I really like it. Okay, some people still don't like it in Canyon because it resets his rage bar. But I like the fact that you're going to be able to heal 3,000 after you kill an army in Canyon. And that really keeps his HP bar really, really high. So that kind of gives everybody an idea of what works and what doesn't work, how to set up. You can use all the different combinations. I'm not saying one combination is better than the other. They're all great. They all have insane amount of value for how you want to set these things up. But that gives you a general guide at the high end of Sunset Canyon, okay? Now, some of you guys who don't have some of these other marches, that's why I did a No Trajan one, a Trajan Constantine one. I even did a couple others that kind of help you understand how this thing works depending on what commanders that you have. So I'm trying to make it all encompassing for everybody. And with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Throw a thumbs up on it. And until next time, we'll see you, broskies.